Have you ever walked into the office or, logged into a morning meeting and instantly felt this weird, chaotic shift in the air? It's that kind of sudden ambiguity where nobody quite knows what's going on, but absolutely everyone feels the tension. Today, we're unpacking exactly what happens in our brains when we're faced with that kind of sudden confusion, and how we actively wrestle meaning out of a totally chaotic situation.
So think about this for a second. How do you react when a wild rumor hits the office? Do you immediately start digging for clues, or do you kind of just pretend you didn't hear a thing? We're going to use this highly relatable scenario of a swirling office rumor to track the really fascinating psychological journey our minds take. We'll follow it right from initial denial all the way to a functional resolution.
Okay, let's dive into this. First, we'll look at wrestling with chaos. Then, we'll walk through the 3 psychological steps we take. Phase 1, avoidance. Phase 2, competition. And Phase 3, compliance. Finally, we'll wrap it all up with landing on a reality.
Part 1. Wrestling with chaos, the inciting incident. To really understand how we progress toward meaning, we need an anchor. So imagine your workplace right now. Out of nowhere, rumors begin to swirl about impending massive company layoffs. The air is thick with whispers. The data is totally incomplete. This right here is our inciting incident. It's the catalyst that forces our brains to either step up and make sense of the mess or completely retreat.
That brings us to Phase 1, avoidance, tuning out the noise. When faced with sudden complexity and conflict, the very first step for a lot of us is simply sidestepping it entirely. It's the classic head-in-the-sand reflex. We actively ignore information, events, or even our own emotions that just don't fit our current comfort zone.
Now, this avoidance isn't just laziness, right? It stems from fear, uncertainty, or honestly, just lacking the tools to process an overwhelming reality. It is deeply linked to cognitive dissonance. That's the psychological tension that hits when a terrifying potential reality, like massive layoffs, clashes with your deeply held belief in a secure job. Avoidance steps in as a psychological shield. It basically keeps the peace and protects your mind for just a little while longer.
You've absolutely felt this before. You hear a rumor and you just think, nope, not my problem. You skip the all-hands meetings, you dodge the water cooler chatter, and you just dismiss the data entirely. In Carl Wick's theories of organizational sense-making, this is actually considered pre-noticing. You aren't even really engaging yet. And while this perfectly normal reaction buys you time to survive the ambiguity, it does ultimately stall your understanding. Phase 2, competition, wrestling with meaning. Because, let's face it, avoidance rarely lasts forever. When the noise gets way too loud to ignore, you're forced to confront it. This phase is characterized by a chaotic, messy fight for clarity. You start battling over what the situation actually means, desperately trying to impose some sort of order onto a really messy reality. Suddenly, you're caught in a tug of war. You start hearing fiercely conflicting takes from your coworkers. On one side, people are panicking, shouting, "The layoffs are real." On the other side, they're insisting, "No way, it's just a scare tactic." You find yourself arguing with colleagues, frantically weighing these little fragments of evidence and debating internally. It's a clash of interpretations. It's your version of reality versus theirs, and honestly, often versus the cold, hard facts.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why sense-making is a profoundly social process. We compete so fiercely to define the narrative because, well, meaning shapes power, it shapes action, and it shapes identity. Studies on crisis management reveal that groups often splinter during this exact phase. Rival explanations are aggressively pushed until one active, emotional, and very messy story finally wins out over all the rest.
Phase 3, compliance, settling into a narrative. Eventually, the dust just has to settle. This is the good enough landing spot. Competition inevitably narrows the field of ideas. Some lose, others gain traction, setting the stage for this final step where an individual or a whole group finally lands on a single interpretation and aligns with it, mostly just to move forward.
It's super vital to understand here that compliance is rarely about joyfully agreeing with the undisputed truth. Often, it ties heavily into social conformity. Just like in Solomon Asch's famous conformity experiments, we frequently align with a group narrative just to fit in. But it's also driven by pure, pragmatic exhaustion. Endless competition wastes a massive amount of mental energy, so eventually, we kind of just pick a lane to keep the peace.
Let's look at how this plays out back in our layoff scenario. Suddenly, the rumors are confirmed by an official, maybe somewhat vague, email from the boss. You might deeply dislike the news, but you comply with the narrative. You think to yourself, okay, this is happening. Time to update my resume. In sensemaking terms, this is the acting phase. You've made just enough sense of the chaos to actually do something, even if grudgingly. It's about functionality, not perfection.
Landing on a reality, the sense-making journey. We've just traced an incredible psychological arc together, from the initial shock of chaos, straight through denial, into a fierce struggle for truth, and finally settling into a resolution. Let's step back and see how these pieces actually build our functional understanding of the world.
So we have avoidance, competition, and compliance. But remember, this progression is almost never strictly a straight line. Human psychology is way too complex for that. Highly confrontational people, they might skip avoidance entirely and jump straight into competition. Others might actually reach compliance only for a shocking new email to pop up, looping them right back into avoidance all over again. It's a fluid, incredibly dynamic process.
So the crucial point is this. Every single phase serves a vital psychological function. Avoidance is triggered by fear and cognitive dissonance. It temporarily stalls understanding to buy you time. Competition is driven by a desire for power and identity, ultimately narrowing down the possible realities. And compliance happens out of pure pragmatism and conformity, resulting in sense finally being made, well, at least for now. No matter how messy it feels, each step helps us build a working story to navigate our lives by.
So, how will you handle the next chaotic rumor? The next time sudden ambiguity strikes your workplace, or even your personal life? I really challenge you to catch yourself in the act. Are you hiding your head in the sand? Are you fiercely fighting for control of the narrative? Or have you finally settled into a reality just so you can take action? Understanding this progression is literally your first real step to mastering the chaos. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep questioning the world around you.